Are you looking to become a better real estate investor? Then hang on, because you're about to experience another episode of the world's most popular real estate podcast, the BiggerPockets Podcast. But before we get to this week's show, I wanted to invite you to become part of our community, BiggerPockets.com, the real estate investing social network. The membership is free, and you'll instantly gain access to networking opportunities, educational content, investor tools, and more. Sign up now and get a free copy of our book, The Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Real Estate Investing, read by hundreds of thousands of budding entrepreneurs. Just click this link right here, or just head to BiggerPockets.com. With that, let's get to the show.
This is the BiggerPockets Podcast, show 87.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
What's going on, everybody? This is Josh Dorkin, host of the BiggerPockets Podcast, here with the traveling man, the guy who hasn't been around for weeks and weeks, the guy trekking across America, Mr. Brandon Turner. What's up, dude?
It is good to be home. I'm finally back in my office for at least a couple days.
Yeah, it's good to have you home, man. It's tough when you're not around.
Thanks. Yeah, I had a good time. I went to the Minnesota State Fair and a family reunion, played at a wedding, got to see a cop chasing a cow down the road in Montana. That was exciting. And
nice.
Yeah, it's been a good time, and I'm back home. So
Deep fried butter.
I did not get any deep fried butter this time.
But you got a bucket of cookies, I saw.
I did get a bucket of cookies, Sweet Martha's cookies. If you're a Minnesota person, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say, like, I would kill someone for them.
I never got a bucket in my mailbox. I was waiting.
Here's the thing with Sweet Martha cookies. They're not as good about 15 minutes after you buy them. You have to eat the whole bucket when they're hot and warm and amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, everyone's now really jealous. Be jealous, people.
It sounds good. It sounds all right. Well, today, I'm glad you're back. It's awesome. I'm ecstatic. Also, we kind of have a cool announcement. We got a new team member here on BiggerPockets. I think I might have announced her last week, but I'll say it again. We've got Allison Leung, and she is our community manager now, and she's our lead editor on the blog. She's awesome. So shout out to Allison for being a rock star and taking over lots of the duties that Brandon and myself and our good friend Jaron have been helping with. So thanks again to Allison. That said, we got a really, really good show today. We really, really do. Today we're going to hear an incredible story of a real estate investor who jumped in quickly, got really excited about real estate, ended up losing everything in the crash. He lost it all. It was tragic. The story is phenomenal, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned. So definitely pay attention. The show is truly one of the more honest looks at what can go wrong with real estate, and it's fantastic. So definitely pay attention. There's a ton of great tips. So please stick around. Before we begin the show, we do have a quick message from this show's sponsor, Pensco. And why don't you tell us about that, Brandon?
I'll do it. All right. So did you guys know that right now you can invest your money from an old 401k or an IRA in a wide variety of real estate investment options, including residential properties, commercial properties, flips, raw land, even debt like mortgages and tax liens. With a Pensco self-directed IRA, investing in real estate opportunities is easier than you could ever imagine, and Pensco makes it possible. So call Pensco Trust today at 866-818-4472 for a free real estate investor's guide, or learn more at learn.pensco.com.
Awesome. They have an office here in Denver. Invited me and Scott from the office here. We went down and hung out with those guys, and they were pretty cool. Definitely good people. So it's great to have them as a sponsor, and we do
trying to rub it in them out there. Is that just
I've tried to make it clear. You really want to be here in Denver, man. It's a great place, and
I just spent 2 weeks in the Midwest. I don't need more than that.
All right. Enough. All right. Cool. Well, anyway, listen, and that kind of leads to today's quick tip. All right, today's quick tip. If you are interested in getting your brand's message in front of tens of thousands of real estate enthusiasts, you can advertise directly here on the BiggerPockets podcast. If you're interested in that, send an email to advertise@biggerpockets.com or fill out our form at biggerpockets.com/advertise. All right, that's it. Let's get to this thing. Let's bring in our guest, Nathan Brooks. He's a full-time real estate investor from Roland Park, Kansas. I couldn't find it on a map, but yeah, it's somewhere. Yeah. All right. He does a mix of both fix and flips and rentals while still working a full-time job. And like I said earlier, his story is really, really incredible and inspiring. So with that, and he's funny, by the way.
Funny. And did you know my song I was humming? That was it was
The Witch.
Kansas?
Yeah,
okay,
I know.
good. Okay.
I know.
Just making sure you get pop culture. Come on.
I made a reference later in the show. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, his story is incredible, and why don't we bring him in? So, Nathan, welcome to the show, man. It's great to have you here.
Hey, thanks so much, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. You've been writing on the blog lately, and I really, I just want to tell you this publicly. I love reading your articles every week. It's just like you're like one of my favorite writers, and I get a kick out of every week. So
Why don't
thank
you guys get a room?
I'm just saying, people should check it out.
No, his articles are really good.
Well, thank you very much. That means a lot, and I enjoy writing them.
Well, cool. Well, let's start at the beginning. How did you get into real estate? Thank you.
Yeah, I've listened to a lot of these podcasts and read a lot of blogs, and I think my story runs along the same lines as, I really was an unintentional investor at the beginning. I wanted to be in real estate, but I didn't necessarily have any idea what I was doing. And I literally met a guy sitting in a restaurant who was talking about real estate at a different table, who had nothing to do with me. Walked over, introduced myself, and boom, a few weeks later, I have a business partner.
Wow.
So you were having lunch with your friend, spouse, whatever, and you start listening to the conversation of the people next to you. That's kind of nosy, man.
There are a few ways you could look at that, but yes.
All right. So you're listening to this guy. He's talking about real estate. It's pretty bold. I mean, we all listen to conversations around us, but to get up and be like, hey man, wow, that's fascinating. How did that go? I'm just curious, because if I did it, I'd probably get punched in the face.
Real quick, speaking of that, about listening to people, every time I've ever eaten lunch or dinner with Josh Dorkin here, I mean, every meal we've ever eaten together when we're at a conference or whatever, Josh strikes up this super good friendship with the people sitting next to us. The last time we went to this Italian restaurant, these ladies invited us, or wasn't Italian? Yeah, they wanted
Italian. It was Italian, but yeah.
Well, whatever.
It's the emphasis that matters. Here,
okay, whatever. So the lady invited us to come stay at her house up in Canada, and I don't know, everywhere we go, Josh buds in the conversation.
And the other Italian restaurant the day before was
same
thing.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, back to you. So I don't remember Josh's question.
Here's the thing: I can get the life story out of anybody in 10 minutes, regardless. So the approaching part was not the scary part. It was what came after that, which was, hey, this is great. Hey, we became best buds. Hey, we had a bunch of meetings, and hey, the first day I bought a house, I bought two with no money. On a assumable loan through a local bank. Wow. And boom, I was a real estate investor.
So you walked in and picked up two properties, bang, with no idea what the heck you were doing, because you were listening to a guy sitting and eating a sandwich next to you. And now you're like, what on earth do I do?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's scary, isn't it?
It was not necessarily, looking back, my best move.
Yeah, let me ask you real quick about the guy you met. Was he I don't know, I don't want to say old, but he was an older investor, I'm assuming, right? Not your age, or what?
Not really, man. He was a couple of years older. He's that strong, fit, athletic, boisterous, brilliant. I was fired up. I'm like, man, this guy is gonna be the meal ticket, and this guy knows what he's doing, and he's going to be a great partner, and I'm going to learn this business along with him. However, that is not how the story unfolded.
All right, so you got these two properties. You're partnered with him now. How was that partnership set up? How'd you guys do it?
So as 50-50. I bought the properties and financed them, and he was the construction guy and was going to run the crews, get the rehabs done, and so forth.
So were these flips or buy and holds?
They were flips.
Okay, so you started with 2 flip projects at once, never having done anything before.
Oh yeah, almost $400K worth.
Oh yeah, that's a really bad idea.
No.
All right, so you're knee deep in these 2 projects. You're freaking out, ripping your hair out, going crazy. Let's walk us through what that experience was like and why anybody listening who has never done a deal should never do what you did.
Well, because as you go a few weeks into this process and this so-called business partner begins not showing up, begins not doing the work, begins not answering his telephone, then shows up on Friday with his hand out for, wad of cash. Yeah. So that's not how you do it, folks. Okay. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
So not only did I get myself into 2 properties, not only did I really not have any money in the first place, nor did I have I had no idea what I was doing. Then I simply, was stuck in a position where I had no idea how to get out.
Okay. So you're partnered with a guy who flamed out, who basically wasn't there for you, who was a flake, I guess it sounds like. Let's just get into that. We don't have to talk about who he is or anything else, but for folks listening, how could you have avoided that situation?
Well, there's a few things. First of all, don't go into business with somebody you don't know. It's stupid. Second is, once I realized the problem was happening, rather than actually getting out of the situation and either selling the houses or, just really solving the problem, I kept feeding the problem, which was paying him, trying to make it work, trying to keep the deals together, because at the end of the day, I thought that we had 2 great properties and 2 great deals that I could start with that would help launch my real estate career.
Gotcha. And at some point it may become unavoidable for an investor to not work with somebody that they don't know. Ultimately, you're probably not going to be doing deals with your best friend, so you're more likely than not working with folks that you've got some kind of borderline relationship with. What are the key things that you would want to know about somebody to ensure that, are you going to do a background check? Are you going to screen them in any particular way to see that, they're not going to kind of screw you over like that?
Well, sure. Well, I guess more so not necessarily not knowing them, but having a relationship built around maybe other people that you know, or a personal relationship connection, like through BiggerPockets, for instance, and that you can vet somebody through other people that have worked with them or that that they've done deals.
Yeah. No, that's good. And really quickly, just because somebody's on BiggerPockets doesn't mean that they're vetted. And I want to point that out to everybody. I'm the person who should be like, yeah, BiggerPockets is the greatest place ever. And it is. But, we don't vet people. There are plenty of people on the site that, we're not an investigative body. We can't go out and look at everybody who joins the site. So you have to do your due diligence on BP. BiggerPockets is just a miniaturization of the world, so to speak. And I can't press upon folks enough that that's really important. Just because they're on BP doesn't mean, or they're active on BP doesn't mean that somebody's, trustworthy. So just keep that in mind. And it's just kind of protect yourself.
Yep. And we did talk about that also with Mehran Kamari and Don Anastasi, which we had both on the podcast now. They found each other through BiggerPockets. And I asked both of them that question is like, how did you find a good partner? And both of them kind of had the same answer, right? It was, they looked for people who were active in the community, people who were engaged, people who were knowledgeable, people who were, obviously like showing effort that they knew what they were doing. And that is the great thing. The more you hang around people, the more you see how they interact with others, the more you can kind of gauge them and decide if you want to work with them. And that's BP or in the real world, no matter what, maybe it's not a good idea to jump in first day. This guy seems to like real estate. Clearly we're going to be good partners. Would you agree, Nathan?
Nobody's laughing at you, Nathan.
Right. No. And believe me, I've learned my own lesson, and it actually got worse after that. But the point with that was that we I could have done a better job. And in the end of the day, you can find a great partner that maybe you don't know, but you start smaller. Don't go buy 2 houses. Don't go get 2 huge projects to do. So start somewhere smaller where you can vet them.
Gotcha. Yeah. How did this play out? So you said it got worse. I mean, let's hear it, man. Testify.
Well, not only did we buy those 2 houses, but then within the next 18 months or so, we bought half a dozen more houses, and we own multiple rentals. And
this is with the same guy.
No, actually, I of course found another investor on Craigslist who had multiple properties for sale. I could always negotiate a deal. It was never a problem. I can negotiate any deal with anything. I can always, get the deal that I want to work the way that I want it to. But in this case, because the deals weren't good and I didn't have the background to say, hey, I need to make sure I understand what the deals are. So I got into them without really having an understanding of what I'd gotten myself into. So now we own nearly, $1 million worth of real estate, and I have this partner failing. I have these properties that are mostly Section 8 tenant occupied, and literally one of them that I purchased, I walked up to the house the first day I'd owned it, and the tenant, boom, moving out. So another one had, mold issues, and one had foundation issues, and there's a whole host of things that I just royally messed up.
How soon did these other properties follow the first 2? And did they follow after you had closed on the first 2, or were you still rehabbing them when you bought the 3rd and the 4th?
We were still rehabbing the first 2 properties. And they all came kind of in succession, 3 or 4 months later, and then another, month or 2 later.
Okay. So, there's this concept. It's paralysis by analysis, right? I'm sure everybody listening has heard us talk about it. And paralysis by analysis is, you don't make a move because you're just frozen by evaluating and and trying to figure out what to do. And I'm going to call you out here, Nathan. You're on the show. You know what you're in for. Nathan here has done the complete opposite of paralysis by analysis. Nathan here, I tried to come up with something clever, but I can't really coin anything. But he's literally so excited about real estate that he's just buying stuff and not really prepared for what he's buying. And
no idea.
And I was guilty of that early on as well.
Yeah, same here.
And it's equally as dangerous as anything else that you can do in this industry. And in fact, I think it might potentially be the worst thing that you could possibly do in the industry is get so excited and just say, I'll figure it out. Let me jump in. Let me just keep buying. There is something to say to figuring things out as you go along. But I want to press upon folks to be careful and not have 10 projects going at once or 2 projects going at once until you start to figure out how to do one. And I'm not trying to use you as an example, but I am, because, it just works. So, all right. So you're in this horrible situation. You've got all these things happening. How did it play out? I mean, clearly it's going to blow up in your face, right?
It blows up.
Oh, man.
Everything goes to hell in a handbasket. And I literally, one by one, the banker on the 2 first properties starts calling the note due. I try to have a deed in lieu of foreclosure on one, which he agrees to, and then subsequently sends a lawsuit, filing to my house a week or 2 later, begins collecting rent illegally from the tenants who I then at that point placed in the house because I had no contractor. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't really even have a lease in place with those people who were living there, just trying to pay for, covering the monthly, mortgage amounts on those houses. The other 2, multiple properties, one we ended up losing in foreclosure. We had a short sale on another house. And eventually we literally filed Chapter 7 and lost literally every single thing, every piece of property, and we'd spent every dime of cash that we had trying to save them up to that point.
What?
Wow.
When was this? This sounds like the crash. I mean, was this when everyone else was?
This was the crash. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So 2007, 2008, somewhere in there. 9.
Yep. 2009 is when we filed.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you went from, nothing to this big portfolio, and from the outside everything looks good, but the systems weren't there, the education wasn't there, and the empire was kind of crumbling under your feet. So it all fell apart, chapter 7, and now where are you? I mean, mentally, are you like, hey, but I still love real estate, or are you just like, get me the heck away from anything to do with real estate?
Well, there was a period of mourning for sure. I built the empire. I told my wife, we were going to have this awesome business, and, I failed. But at the end of the day, for me, we had a decision to make, which was, do we learn from the mistakes that we just put ourselves through? And do we jump back in and go after it and learn from the mistakes we made? Or do we, go through all that pain and suffering and then do nothing with the education that we just received?
Yeah.
And so for us, we jumped back in much more that I was excited about than my wife, believe me.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we jumped in to real estate 18 months later with 50% cash down and a private money guy who, was expensive, of course. And I had asked 27 times before I got a yes for private money to buy our first property after post-bankruptcy.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's serious. That's serious. I just want to cycle back on one item left, but the pre-crash, so to speak, and clearly this guy was not a great partner to have. The first partner. What was the final straw? What put you over the edge? Because you put up with a lot of nonsense for a long time. Why? When did he kind of finally get to you?
You couldn't even write the story, man. It's one of those where literally had taken. I can't even believe I did all of these things, but I had a business credit card. He had literally taken the business credit card, which of course I'd put him on, and out of town trip with some person, and literally spent additional money, not only the money, tens of thousands of dollars really, that I had paid him over the course of probably 2 months trying to get him in and out of getting this construction stuff done. And so not only lost tens of thousands of dollars, not only he'd put money on this credit card, but, then there started being a feeling of like, my life could actually be in danger, or this guy really, I don't know if he's schizophrenic, or I don't know if he's bipolar, or I don't know if, what is it about this person that my life is actually, it could be in danger at this point, and I should really extricate myself from it.
Gotcha. Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that. It sounds horrible, and I don't wish that upon you or anyone else who's listening, or anyone else. Period. I mean, that sounds awful, and clearly you walked away with a few lessons.
It was, and it was horrible. And I think the point of this, and the reason why I'm willing to talk about it, and that I want people to hear the story, is that there's two things. One, it's okay to go slower, and I know we hear a lot of these amazing stories about people who have built these incredible businesses, and I believe me, I want to do that, and I think you guys share in that feeling. And we have to understand how to make it sustainable and how to grow with that business. And two, that it's okay to fail, and it's okay to understand where we come from, and we can look back on it as long as we're learning from it and we're making a conscious choice to not make those same mistakes.
Yeah. Well, let's just say hypothetically you could go back in time and do it all over again. Knowing what you know now, what would you do differently, like this time around? And people who are listening to this podcast who are just getting started and they're super excited and they're in your shoes 5 years ago, what would you do?
Well, Michael Quarles had a line in one of the podcasts of, he didn't know what he didn't know. Yeah. And I didn't know. So, looking at those two properties, would I have still bought them? Maybe I would have, but I would have certainly brought in a business partner that I understood the person as well as understood their abilities within the deal. And so in that hypothetical situation, there was money to be made, and the properties looking back were great properties. And if it would have been done right and it would have run smoothly and the guy wouldn't have been a crook, we would have made money and we probably would be telling a very different story today.
Yeah.
But it's not what happened.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Wow.
I look back on some of my early properties that I have, that are, some of the first few that, I have a property that I worked on for a solid year myself, my wife and I, every day fixing this thing up. I've told this story before, and then it sat on the market for a year and we ended up selling it and breaking even. So I lost 2 years of my life essentially, right? And a couple other ones that were just bad rental properties that I lose money on every month. But like, I don't know if I were to go back, I don't think I would change a thing about that, because like the lessons I learned will make me a better and have made me a better investor today and have helped me to, be able to share my story to help other people just like you're doing today. So I kind of, can resonate with that, it sucks and I wouldn't want to go through it again, but there is something to say about the lessons you learn from failure. So.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also even just on the rental properties that we purchased, and the ones that I purchase now are just so much different. They're structured differently. I have much less leverage and I have much more cash flow. And so to be able to understand what I need to have in reserves and those kind of things versus what I'm bringing in on a consistent basis from rent, and really understanding what that looks like and what your business model actually is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so we're gonna call you the comeback kid, Nathan, because you right. You had this tragic beginning, and presumably, we haven't heard the story, but presumably things turned around, and so I want to talk about picking up the pieces after this really tough failure and loss where everything went wrong. So you're at this low point, and now let's start bringing it back up. Bring it back up. So first thing that happens, everything went sour. You talk to your wife. You're back in that position where you can get that first deal. What did that look like?
Well, at the time, it was a rental. It was a little rental property, and in our market here in Kansas City, there's a few different places you can buy that kind of 2% rule kind of property. Everybody likes to talk about on the, so where we could make a good cash flow, and we could also get into that property because it wasn't that expensive. And so the first property we purchased, it was $21,000. It was a 3-bed, 1-bath, 1,300 square feet house, and it rents for $800 a month.
Wow.
So put a couple grand into it. I'd literally put 50% down. So, roughly $10,000. And, immediately had a renter within just a few weeks. And I still own that property today. And that house is worth 70 grand. And we just refinanced it actually and pulled a bunch of cash out
Nice.
to buy another property in that same neighborhood.
Nice. So let's talk about that property a little bit. What kind of property can you buy for $20,000? You know what I mean? Like that seems just, even in my area, that's crazy low, right? Like what kind of tenants do you get? What kind of neighborhood is it?
He's in Kansas, Brandon.
Well, mind you, Kansas is it's kind of like a Minneapolis or anything else, one of those kind of cities that has a lot of outlying areas. So yes, I do appreciate the Kansas joke there, but
that wasn't a joke.
I knew I could.
I've driven through Kansas, man. That is one of the toughest states in this country to drive across. Talk about wanting to bash your head into a window.
You don't like
I
corn?
thought Ohio was worse.
You know what? Illinois is bad. Ohio's bad. It's just flat with straight and nothing. And you're like, oh my God, get me out of here. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. Or maybe that's just me.
That's when you listen to the BiggerPockets podcast, Josh.
Well, if you read one of my blog posts that, my wife and I listened to, a couple dozen while we had, 2 screaming small children in the car driving to and from Pennsylvania from Kansas. It's a long drive.
Yeah, it's tough. I've done that. Ooh.
So anyway, what kind of tenants are you getting at a $20,000 property? And
okay, well, remembering back to that, this was still really in the crash time and not the trajectory going higher, and so we were able to buy it. Now knowing that house is in a really pretty good neighborhood, and so it's probably a C property as we'd call it. There's not a lot of crime. There's there's some issues here and there, but not really any that we've dealt with. This particular tenant, has a family and there's several kids, and they pay on time, and we really have very little problems as far as the actual property is concerned. So it's really a pretty good property, pretty good neighborhood. The only caveat to that is that today you certainly can't buy that house for $21,000. That deal is no longer there. So
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. So how are you finding properties today? I mean, I don't know if we want to shift over to that part of the podcast now, but I mean, if you can't buy that one anymore for 20, what are you doing today?
Well, to be honest, there was actually a house on that same street, which, by the way, I thought it was perfect because the street name was Harmony, and I loved in my life to be able to get back into real estate. And the first deal was on Harmony, and so it was kind of one of those moments where I felt like the stars had aligned, and we came back to a place that made sense.
Oh, that's great.
And so there's actually a house on that same street that I just missed, unfortunately, because it didn't get out of investor time. It was a HUD or a REO property, and but it was $30,000 for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. But I still would have bought it all day long because you can rent those houses in that neighborhood, so quickly, and you get great tenants. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a barometer on what they are now.
And are you managing your own properties now? And are you just doing rentals? Are you doing flippings as well? And are you managing yourself?
Well, just got through firing my property manager because they had just done a terrible job, and there was some disrepair on this particular property, and we unfortunately, I didn't really realize how far gone. And for people listening, even though you have a property manager, it doesn't mean they're managing anything. And so you still have to do your due diligence. And for me, that meant I'm going to go by that property at least a few times a year and make sure I understand. And I'm always checking in with the management company so that they know, hey, I'm here. I want to note that this property is cared for.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And it's funny. I'm going through paperwork right now for a property I sold, 6-7 years ago, and it's just going through it this weekend, as a matter of fact. And I looked at the information that my property manager was sending me. I had a tenant that was 6 months behind in rent that was still sitting in their apartment. I cannot fathom A, that they did not do anything, and B, that I didn't know enough to say, you guys need to do something. I mean, it's astounding. It's astounding that looking back, that was even possible. So, just because you have a management company doesn't mean they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And do not, please, people, do not allow somebody who is, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, when somebody's late in their first month, you send them a notice, and if they don't take care of it, you get them out, period. That I'm kicking myself in the behind right now, 7 years later for what I did. I can't believe it.
Well, we learned those lessons, and for us now too, we don't mess around with that at all. They're late and past whatever the lease is, a couple days, boom, they get that 3-day pay or quit. That's it.
Yeah.
We don't mess around, and we take care of our properties. They're beautiful. They rent quickly, and they know they have their job and we have our job, and they better do theirs.
How do you make a unit stand out above other units in the area? How do you compete against other rental units beyond what you said? Keep your units beautiful. I mean, is there anything else that you do to stand out amongst the crowd?
Well, I think one of the things, like in these C kind of neighborhoods, there's a lot of people that don't care that much about their properties.
Yep.
And from the get-go, when they walk in that property, it has a little bit nicer features. We actually take time and put money into the bathroom. We take time and put some money into the kitchen. Not to the point that we can't get it back out, but that when they walk in, they want to live there.
Yeah.
And we're going to get top market rent for the area. We're going to have less vacancy days. We're going to have less things that break, because we're going to say, hey, listen, this is nice, and if you break it, you're buying it.
Yeah.
And so, we set the expectation at the front.
Do you find that they do take care of the properties? I did not have very good success in C properties, and found that things were destroyed constantly. So with putting in higher end things, do you see that they're treated better or?
Well, I don't know when we see obviously any of these kind of things, we have our own litmus test on what a C property means. For these, I really have had a lot better success. Now, it's not like when I had the Section 8 tenants in those properties, and I would have called that more like a D neighborhood. It was terrible, and they didn't care. They didn't take care of anything. It wasn't a good situation, and that's not what my business model is now. It's a better neighborhood than that. It's a better tenant than that, and so we've had a lot of success with that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. So do you do any flipping now?
We do. And I've tried to take some time to, every time I look at a deal and every time I think through what the options are, the more that we understand and the more that we can see through what we've done, we can have a better idea of how to approach the deals. And so, for instance, one that we're doing right now, I had it under contract, but then there was far more work that had to be done in a foundation issues, and they're all over my market. Foundation, you can spend a lot of money very quickly. And this particular one, the lady owed more money on it than it was worth. And so she couldn't really do a short sale for some various reasons. And so instead of her bringing more money out of pocket, I told her, listen, I will run this like it was my flip. I will just charge you a flat amount of money. And I told her kind of basically everything, what it would have looked like, what I would have made, and made it very appealing for her so that she could have somebody that she understood would be able to get her out of it. And through that, I still made a great amount of money on the deal. I had no risk, zero, because I don't own it. I didn't pay for the contractors. I didn't pay for the foundation. And by the way, we literally dug out an entire 20-foot, long, 9-foot deep hole and pushed an entire wall up with this deal, in a full renovation inside. And I was able to save her, $15,000, $20,000 when she sold it, because, she didn't have to come out of pocket to pay it since she was so far in the hole. So there's a lot of interesting ways. Everybody, there's so many deals out there, and there's so many ways to structure a deal. Another flip we're working on right now is a huge project. It's 2,400 square foot house. It's a full renovation. It was like the cat lady kind of deal, and it, you can smell this house.
No jokes, Josh. No jokes.
It's like
from the
Brandon's
corner
house,
of the street, guys. From the corner of the street, you can smell the house. The doors open.
Was it like hoarding or just cats?
It was cats and cigarettes.
Because they go hand in hand.
They do not.
Luckily, it was not a hoarding house. Actually, the house that my wife and I bought was a hoarder house, and come to find out, it took them 17 months to just get the house cleared out before they could even sell it.
Wow.
And so that's a whole nother story. But
hey, so you talk about the cat house, the cat lady. Hi, how you doing? Here's my cats. She got the cigarette in one hand. She got the cats flying around on her. She's throwing them at you like Brandon does.
You don't understand. There are cat pictures like every 10 feet in this whole house.
Well, but so here's
they're
what
so cute.
It's
God,
statues.
stop.
They're so cute.
Like,
okay.
cat figurines.
All right, just like Brandon's house. Here's what I want to know. Here's what I want. How do you clean it? Because that's a question that comes up on the forums a lot. Hey, I just bought this house. I've done everything. I cannot get the smell out. What do you do?
Well, there's a few things we can do. First of all, you just get everything out of there. We're tearing every bit of carpet. There's just so much stuff in there that's been collecting that smell. You got to get it out. And second, there's something that we use, besides paint and that kind of stuff that you can really, obviously in a house like that, you're painting everything. But there's also a thing that we use called an ionizer, I believe, and you can get it like Home Depot or whatever. And a lot of times you use it for mold, but it cycles the air. It really helps actually clean particles out of the air. And it does an amazing job of getting that smell out of spaces like that. So for mold or smells or whatever. So we use that a lot. Gotcha.
And hopefully, any places that have mold, the mold has also been removed. You're not just running the ionizer to cover up the stench of mold. Yeah.
No, that's another lesson learned. And people really should make sure that they have the compass driving in the right direction, and that when we find things like that, we've built in the budget to fix them, whether it's mold or something else, and we do it right, and we know that we can go to sleep at night, that we've done a great job, and we have a great business, and and that's, that when the investors get the bad name, I think that's one of those situations where we band-aid it rather than fixing it. And I don't do that.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, that's great. And it's really important. I harp on it all the time. Listen, we, if one of us goes and does a crap job on a rehab or, manages their property terribly, it reflects poorly upon the rest of us and it makes it harder for everybody. It really does. And not only for everybody else, but it also makes it harder for you. So, if you're doing a great job as an investor, it's only going to come back and help you out. So that's great advice.
Yeah. Hey, how are you finding deals today? I mean, what's your main strategy for finding stuff?
Well, I actually just did my first wholesale deal, and this flip that I'm talking about actually came through a wholesaler. We are buying stuff on the MLS still, especially in those rental areas. And for a while, we were able to pick up some properties that were flips on the market. But right now, in the KC market anyway, almost all those aren't getting out of the investor time period where, that there's 15 days or 20 days for owner occupants to buy them, and then they're not being, they're being picked up. So I'm putting a lot more time and effort into the relationship with several wholesalers, and through BiggerPockets, actually, I've connected with quite a few different wholesalers, and building that network that we can do through like a BiggerPockets, which is totally awesome, guys, by the way.
Thank you.
And I love it, and I love spending time on there, and the relationships that I've gotten from BiggerPockets have already contributed to deals that are coming in financing and all kinds of things. So it really is worth the time and effort. And by the way, you can't expect to have deals and those sort of things coming out of BiggerPockets if you don't put in the time and effort to do it.
Yeah.
So that's really important.
Awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
nice.
So you wrote a post. I wanted to make sure I touch on this today. You wrote a post a couple weeks ago, maybe it was last week, called "The Art of Saying No" or "How to Avoid Buying a House That Could Literally Kill Somebody."
Oh yeah.
I'm wondering if you can, I guess, tell us a little bit about those, because not everyone listens to the podcast. We have tens of thousands of people listening to this show. Not everyone's read that. Can you kind of tell us, maybe hit both those? I want to hit both those things. So talk about why how to say no, and also tell us that story about that house.
Yeah, it was, the Glenda the Good Witch. Remember the house falls down? He's in Kansas after all.
I knew you could tie that back in. I could see it. Well, first, I think being able to look back, kind of now having heard my story, the art of saying no comes very quickly now for me, because it was a matter of saying, okay, well, it's a lot easier to say no and not have to deal with it than it is to say yes and be in the middle of it and really wish you'd said no.
Yeah.
And so, I don't specifically remember the language I used in that blog post, but for me, it was a matter of saying, do I understand the deal? Does it make sense? Does it make money? Does it pass the gut test? And I really feel good about it, and I can sleep tonight knowing that I just bought this house. And if it doesn't pass those things and it's not working and you have to force to try to make that deal, don't do it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the taglines I used was, there's a deal for everyone, but this deal might not be for you.
Yeah. I like that.
So
I like the gut test too, by the way. I mean, I think people should rely on that more than anything. I mean, you rely on the numbers, but your gut usually is, intuition. And so I love that you mentioned
more importantly is your wife's intuition. Like that's what
yes.
I found.
Yes.
That, like every time like my wife's been like, I really don't think we should buy this one, and I do anyway, it's always a mistake. Like those are the ones that I screw up on.
And if you don't have a wife or your wife's intuition is bad, just call Brandon's.
Yeah, she'll tell you what to buy. She's great like that. All right, so let's talk about the house that could kill someone. What was that story?
I tell you what, I posted on Facebook saying, I'm buying a house in the next 30 days. Who has a deal? And within 12 hours, I had two responses on Facebook. So that was cool. And I'm like, hey, maybe this works. So one of them was this house. And I did my due diligence. I looked at some comps. I had some understanding of what that neighborhood was. And it's actually close to where I grew up. And so I drove there, drove the neighborhood, and walked up to the house. And from what I'd heard from the seller was there was some work that needed to be done. Well, I walk in, and immediately you kind of cross the threshold into this house, and there's the first room that you see looked like it was the worst drywall job I have ever seen. Like a monkey and a 3-year-old did it together. You know, they were just in there going at it. And it was a party. And when it was done, it was like Curious George, you know. So you don't know what you're going to get. But they had fun doing it. And so you walk not that much further down and you walk into the bathroom. Guys, the panel, the electrical panel is in the shower. I'm not kidding you. In the shower.
Stop. Come on.
You wake up, you're like, I'm feeling great. Get out of your bed. You walk to the bathroom, you brush your teeth, you jump in the shower, and boom, you're staring in the face of water coming at you and the electrical panel.
That's
Oh my
amazing.
God.
Wrap your brain around that one. I think that's in the value engineered DIY category. So you walk into this, out of there quickly and into the so-called master bedroom. And there's no flooring at all. It's just, OSB-ish. And there's no drywall, floor, ceiling, anything, nowhere. Every single joint, it still scares me thinking about it now. So every joist above my head is sistered. And then I look to the wall and there are literally the foundation brackets that you put like in a house that's settling in the wall. There's no lighting other than literally a piece of Romex coming out of a wall and a light bulb attached to the end of, So at this point, obviously, I'm starting to think about my, life insurance policy holder and, making sure that I had everything, lined up correctly. Do I call my wife and, tell her I love her? So we walk around the other side. There's another bedroom. Come to find out, they had put that one on too. It literally bounced like a trampoline, and it felt like it was going to, come off the side of this house. And the best part of this whole story was they had gone and cut a hole in this roof to add the second story on. But they obviously didn't know what they were doing, and it rained the day that they actually cut the hole in the roof.
Oh no.
And so not only did they not know what they were doing, they had no engineering expertise, they had no contracting expertise, they hadn't, built it correctly, and they had all this water damage from having the, heavens opened up on the house, the day that they chose to, bust the skill saws out and cut a big hole in it.
Oh,
so
man.
Yeah, it was.
That's not good.
So you didn't buy it.
I did not buy it.
Was the seller, the person that you were dealing with, were they the seller or were they a wholesaler in this one? I might have missed it. Sorry.
It's okay. It was the seller.
Now, did you actually, were they there with you or was it an agent? Oh yeah. Man. I don't know. That would have been real hard for me to bite my tongue.
No, I didn't bite my tongue. And let me tell you what I mean by that. And I think this is important for people to hear. Okay. So, as we know the backside of my story and knowing that we'd said yes to so many times, and probably, 5 years ago, I'd have been, gung-ho about doing something with this house, and it would have been a horrible idea because I wanted to help her. And I think it's important that we understand as investors that we're going into situations that are horrible sometimes. And these people have no idea how to get out. Everybody else has told them no. No real estate agent wants to go into that house. And how do we help solve the problem? Because that's what we're there for.
Yeah.
And so for her, I literally said something like, there's no way I'm buying this house. And I want you to hear me say this, that I don't think you should be living in this house either. And I'm not sure if I told her I thought it was.
Oh, she was living in there?
Oh, yeah. They're living in this house.
Oh, jeez.
So I told her immediately, I'm like, literally, I think you should get out of this house right now. And I went through a couple options I thought she had, which was short sale. And I'm not sure what it would sell for or if they'd ever approve it because she owed just a pile of money on this house.
Demolish.
Or second, yes. I said, literally, call your bank, mail the keys, throw a party, and move out. Get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Well, I think this is a really important story because, I know as people always say like a job of a real estate investor is to solve problems. Like, and we're all problem solvers. We like to solve these puzzles and put the deal together. And I know I'm guilty of that, always trying to make every deal fit. And I've heard it said like there's always a price for every property, but
Yeah.
sometimes there isn't, right? Like sometimes there's opportunity cost and there's other issues that, yeah, maybe you could solve this problem if you really put enough work into it, but is it really worth it?
Well, and I totally agree. And I think, like, for instance, if I was an investor that had, say, all I do is flips, and I do flips in the area, and I have maybe a general contractor, somebody on my payroll, or I have contractor person that I actually partner with on a regular basis that we could go in and tear that down. But I don't really do that. That's not my business model. And so for me to take that time and learning that whole new process in the midst of all of that kind of heralds me back to the beginning of my real estate career and saying, okay, no, this is not my model. This is not what I understand. And this is not something that I can spend all this time and energy on, in this deal. And I don't think it's going to make any money anyway. So, that's when you kind of move on from it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is
awesome.
great advice. I mean, yeah, I people need to learn to do that. So,
Yeah. And really quick, I mean, you're literally that's just learning how to say no to a bad or unworkable deal. And it's not easy for everybody. I mean, we hear a lot of people on the show, and, people talk about this all the time. Hey, any deal is anything you can, you talk them down, get them down and do it. But you looked at your picture and you said, oh, I could probably get them down, but I don't have the pieces in place to manage and deal with this deal. And I think that self-evaluation, which you didn't have before the crash and you acquired thereafter, is extremely important. And again, I urge everybody listening to, try and develop that intuition, that skill, because that's huge.
Right. And also empathy for those people, or sympathy, and understanding that, hey, I mean, these people are living in this house and it's a terrible situation. And so you can just walk out of there. But for me, I really wanted to be able to at least say, I did everything I could to help her, not just in the situation because I couldn't buy it, but because it's the right thing to do. And even though I didn't make a dime on it, give her some direction and make her feel like at least she has some options to get out.
Yeah.
So,
on that topic of, helping people no matter what, one thing that I find, I guess, interesting was when I started advertising for motivated sellers and, whether it was on Facebook, or whatever, and people started calling me, I was really nervous at first to talk to people because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say. I can't help most of these people. I mean, what do I know if I can't buy their house? But what I found was actually really cool is kind of take it from the standpoint of, I know more about real estate than any of these people do, clearly. I mean, even a beginner in real estate investor probably knows more about real estate than these people do. So like, I don't know. That's just, it's kind of off point here a little bit, but I just want to like kind of encourage people. You can help people whether or not you're going to get money out of a deal or not, whether or not you're going to make a dime or not. Like, make it your goal to help the person in every single phone call that comes in, every conversation you have. Try to help that person fix their situation, whether or not you can do anything or not.
Why? Why would somebody? I mean, no, I agree with you, but like, why would somebody do that? There's something beyond just being a good person. There's also some value that comes out of it. What comes with that?
Well, for me, very clearly is more deals. And I can say 100% there are multiple people that I have bought their homes or helped their friends buy homes who have then called me with another deal. I have this friend, I have, my mother needs to sell or whatever. And so I believe in karma. I believe what comes around goes around, and that we do the right thing because we know in the end it comes back around to us. And just kind of going back to Brandon, also just thinking the fact that what we like through speaking with sellers, you just get better at it.
Yep.
And you understand what their needs are, and you understand how to listen, because that's everything. If you can't understand what the problem is, you can't solve it.
Yeah.
And so I'm a huge proponent of having a mentor. And for me, with the mentors in my life could not only talk through deals, but they can do actual role playing and that kind of stuff, and understanding, have a script, look at somebody else's script, understand where you're going. So at least until you get to the point where you understand what questions to ask and know how to go from there, that you're able to have a confidence going to that conversation.
So how do you find somebody that will take you under their wing, a mentor, somebody that can help you? I mean, without paying the $9.97 a month kind of guy. I mean, how do you find that?
Well, for me, my mentor came off Craigslist.
Really?
I literally called the guy after looking at an ad for a home that he had for sale, and I looked at his business, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the kind of guy I should have had in the first place, which was, a bunch of properties under management, had done, millions and millions and millions of dollars of flips, and had a brokerage, and had people that work for him, and a structure in place clearly that was operating on a scale that could grow. And so I took him to lunch.
Nice.
And, from that came not only a mentor, not only somebody that I trusted to run a deal by, but he also actually became a funder and a partner in deals. And I knew I had finally established the relationship and the trust when he actually called me asking for deals and saying, what do you have going on? I have funds available. Let's do some deals.
Nice.
That's great.
I love that. I mean, we've talked about that
Yeah.
before, but I don't think we could, say that enough about the idea of finding a local successful investor that you can just partner or learn from, and eventually you never know what will happen. I mean, you don't go into it like assuming you're going to do that, but I just think it's so powerful to do that. And
Yeah.
I love that you are an exact example of what I always harp on with that. So.
And we talk about that in our Ultimate Beginner's Guide. And for those people who haven't heard of it or haven't read it, it's biggerpockets.com/UBG, Ultimate Beginner's Guide. We talk about education and how to get training and how to learn the industry. And, as anybody who knows anything about BiggerPockets knows, this is really one of the big things for me as well is, I don't see why somebody would need to pay someone in California or New York or Ohio or wherever, a place that you are not, who's charging you X amount of dollars, you and, 10, 50, 100, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 people, some amount of money for them to train you. When you can find somebody local in your area who's got boots on the ground, who can hold your hand, who you could go sit down for coffee with, and who you're not on the clock with, So there's a big difference between like, hey, I get 60 minutes once every 2 weeks to talk to this guy who's this national guru. He's on TV or he's got a course or whatever it is. You don't have to do that. You can just find that local guy who's successful. And these guys want to find you because you know what? If you're going to be working and you're going to be helping them out, it's in their interest to find young, hardworking investors who are excited. You're going to bring them deals. You're possibly going to partner with them. Find those guys. Those guys are going to help you blow your business up. And you know what? It's not going to cost you a dime. Maybe it'll cost you, $10 for a hamburger or a cup of coffee.
Right. Money well spent. I think having a mentor, depending upon what the business model is and that kind of thing, if it's somebody that really does that niche business or whatever, it's probably worth paying somebody depending upon what it is. But, if you're paying a big pile of money for some guru guy that, you're not having that personal relationship with to understand and really, be invested in your business.
Yeah.
Now, the second part too is, and I actually met with somebody off of BiggerPockets, had coffee he bought. It was great. And one of the things that we were talking about, he had a potential for a partner. And we were talking about what the splits were offered in the deal. And I won't go into details on that, but that he was kind of questioning his split. And I said, dude, you have nothing to offer. Other than your energy, enthusiasm, and willingness to do that. And all of a sudden we left that meeting and he's like, thank you for putting it in perspective, because as new investors, we have a lot to learn, and so we can take that enthusiasm, we can take an opportunity where we can make still a great amount of money. This other person is the risk. They're taking all the risk. They're funding the whole deal. They're teaching you on the same time, and you get that education. And by the way, out of that meeting came some potential for some amazing funding and partnership, which was cool.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. That's great.
That's awesome, man. I love this. We could talk about this forever, but we got to move on, and we're going to hit up the world famous fire round right now.
It's time for the fire round.
This is the fire round.
All right. All right, the fire round. These questions come straight out of the BiggerPockets forums, which you can get to at biggerpockets.com/forums. All right, question number 1. When is it the right time to take action in real estate? We kind of touched on this earlier, but when do you know it's the right time to actually jump in? You've learned enough, you can go get your first deal.
That's a great question. I think the time is when you've aligned the pieces. So do you have some money in reserves? Do you have some experience, education, whether it's through mentor or reading? Maybe you have gone to some sort of seminar, something. Fine. I think once you kind of have the stars aligned and you've gotten some education, and maybe it's a lot more education, or maybe it's a lot more on the mentor side. And I think the thing to me, after all the things I'd gone through, it was really important to me to have some money in the bank when we went out and bought investments, because if you don't have anything to cover the rainy day fund or something that comes up, or some issue, that was the thing to me that, what are you going to do if you have no options? So, have your game plan, have a business plan, have an understanding of what you're actually going to look for buying, whether it's fix and flip or wholesale, or, those kind of deals, and then go for it.
Nice.
Cool.
Nice.
I like
awesome. It. All right. What's your top secret, your number one secret to winning a negotiation?
Well, know the answers before you ask the questions, and you have to be able to understand their motivation and be able to make it a win-win situation. And I love Michael Quarles, and I love hearing him talk. And I think he has a great point. And as far as understanding, like, hey, this house needs a lot of repair, doesn't it? Yes, it does. You have to find your ways to the questions that lead you to the answers that lead you to what you're trying to accomplish, which is buy a house at the right price. Because in real estate, we make the money when we buy it, not when we sell it. So, if you can establish your game plan going into that deal, and kind of understanding where you need to go, and that the seller understands, and they have a full picture of what's going on and why you're offering what you're offering, and that you actually can close. Because there's a lot of guys that'll walk in there and they'll talk a bunch of stuff, and then they don't close the deal.
Nice. And you're talking about show 77 with Michael Quarles, the negotiation show. I think you are. It was he had 2 shows with us. You can find that at show 77, biggerpockets.com/show77, and that'll get you access to that Michael Quarles show. So yeah,
cool. All right, next question. How do you find a good lawyer that understands the investor mindset?
Man, that is a great question. It is vital that attorney understands and probably does real estate. And for me, it was a matter of, I literally interviewed a bunch of people, and I wanted to hear what they've done. I wanted to hear if they were a real estate investor themselves, or maybe they've been in partnership with others. And for me, I have multiple attorneys that I go to, and they have very specific niches that they work in. One's more contracts, one's more, actual, kind of a court proceeding type of attorney, that if we actually have to go in and actually file a lawsuit against somebody. So you have to really understand what their strength is and play to their strengths, just like anything else in an investor in a deal or whatever.
Nice. Cool. All right. What's the best season of the year to sell real estate?
Oh gosh. Anytime. Well, here's the thing. Like in
Every
this
season.
in this market, I'm fired up that winter's coming because it's a great time to buy.
Yep.
And so I know that houses are going to sit longer, and people are going to be more motivated because they're not going to want to pay that gas bill. They're not going to want to pay that electric bill. And so that's a great time to buy. And here, you know, in the spring or in the summer after school's out, a lot of times are the best times to sell. But in our market right now, there's a lot of activity. There's a lot of great comps for the properties that we're flipping in the areas. And, you know, we generally don't buy in areas where there's not a fast turnaround for a flip because we don't want it sitting there. And so we have a great product. It doesn't last on the market, you know, more than, you know, days and weeks. So
Nice.
Great. All right. Final question of the fire round. This is kind of self-serving here, but it was a question. So what aspect of BiggerPockets has helped you the most in your real estate endeavors?
You know, I think that a very immediate access to people who know something and that are willing to talk about it. And I think that's part of the thing for me with BiggerPockets is understanding, okay, there are people with a different market, different paradigm, what they live in, maybe how many deals they've done or how much money they've made or whatever. But you are able to tap into a whole network of people who, one, care, two, want to help, and three, for the most part, give pretty good advice. And so if there's, especially once you get a few people who are commenting on something, it's not just one person, that you can kind of get a feeling of what's going on. And so I think that's the real benefit, even for things for me that I haven't necessarily done before. I've used it for that, where, you know, understanding a sub-2 deal or something like that, where you can put it out there and really have a bunch of people who've actually done it, been there, done that, and can help you give some direction.
Awesome.
Great.
That's great.
All right, let's move on to the last section of our show, which we lovingly call the Famous Four. All right, these questions we ask everyone, and I know the audience is excited to hear what your answers are. So number one, what is your favorite real estate book?
Well, you know, I have two that I've kept and used for a long time. And so one is the Millionaire Real Estate Guide to Investing. And in that company, that the Keller Williams brand, they have a bunch of different books that I really do think are pretty good. And that book has been really helpful, kind of more in a macro level. And the second book that I've used a whole lot is the Unofficial Guide to Real Estate Investing.
I love that book.
Martin Stone, Spencer Strauss. I have that book, and I think they're really good balance between those two books, from a lot more details and nitty gritty in that Unofficial Guide to Real Estate Investing, and then, you know, more macro view and some marketing and skills and that kind of stuff in the other.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I love that book. That was one of probably the most influential books on me, was that Unofficial Guide to Real Estate Investing. So if people haven't, you know, read that yet, definitely get it. That's actually on our list. Both those books are on our list of the top 22 best real estate books of all time, which I will put a link to in the show notes at biggerpockets.com/show 87, maybe. I'll edit this later if it's not correct. All right. Next question. What is your favorite business book? Oh, I just stole your question, Josh. Oh, deal with it. Deal with it.
Man.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. All right. Now I'm going to answer this question.
Ouch.
Do it.
Well, I don't know if you'd consider it a business book, but I was thinking about one book which somebody on this show continues not to read, 4 Hour Work Week, which I really do enjoy. And at some point, I'm going to dedicate a whole blog post to just harassing you, which I'll go name it, about this book. But I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to say Unlimited Power, Tony Robbins. And I love this book because I love the fact that there's so many different ways to look at people in this book, and understanding the structure of how you can actually, like anything else, if you're not internally set up for a deal, it doesn't matter how good the deal is because you're not prepared for it. And so there's so many great things about understanding how to look at people, understanding how to look at deals, understanding how to read people. And so it has just been a hugely helpful book, and I take it almost any time I travel, just as the book to dig back into, read back through, and look at.
That's cool.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
like a week ago, all of a sudden it occurred to me I'd never read a Tony Robbins book, and I was like, "How is that possible?" And so, like, I went on Amazon. I was looking, trying to find the best one. So now that you recommended that, I'm gonna buy that today. So
Nice.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a great book.
Cool.
And by the way, it was a gift from a mentor in my life who happened to be a real estate attorney and title company owner, and it was one of those times for me too. I'm like, I can't believe I haven't read this book, but it's awesome.
Cool.
Cool.
Love it.
Cool. Hobbies. What do you do for fun?
Well, I've been a professional musician longer than I've been a real estate investor. And so I play guitar, play bass, play piano, and sing professionally. And then I also absolutely love CrossFit, and I'm an addict for sure. And I also just completed another triathlon this last weekend as well. So I really enjoy that kind of stuff.
What'd you complete? A triathlon?
Triathlon,
Oh,
yes.
triathlon. Oh, I thought the sound must have jumbled out there. I was like, what's a triathlon?
Yes, that's a new sport.
Yes. Well, I don't know.
Weights and bacon.
You CrossFit guys make stuff up as you go along. So I'm just trying to,
We only make stuff up because it sounds that way, because other people are afraid to, necessarily jump in and do it. I
Right.
think.
Yeah. Well, listen, I haven't sweated in 5-10 years. So yeah.
If I had a CrossFit gym in my area, I would go, or even anybody who did it. But I live in Podunk, so whatever.
You do.
Well,
indeed.
you could build your own little, garage gym and do it.
Yeah, but I would just like throwing
Excuses.
things around and not knowing what I'm doing. So, all right, I'll come have you coach me someday, Nathan. This will be good.
Let's do it. Let's
All
do
right,
it. We'll do it in this great state of Kansas after
you
all.
go.
Oh,
There
good
you go.
luck. Good luck. All right. Show 87. We're almost done. Let's get there. All right. Finally, what do you believe sets apart successful investors from those who never give up, never get started, or just fail?
I think it's the importance of patience and perseverance. And if you don't have patience to understand the deals and your education and learn your craft, then you're never going to be able to persevere through whether it's a great deal or it's a tough deal. And for us to be able to have the understanding of what is and isn't a deal, and to grow in our education, grow in our philosophy, our business, and really understanding what our model is, and doing it over and over and over and over. And even if you aren't in a position where you can buy something yet, practice and write out the deal and understand the deal and understand what your market is, and understand that eventually, because you've done it over and over and over again, it becomes easier, and that you can actually be successful doing it.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Cool.
All right, man. Where do people find out more information about you? Where can they link up with you?
Well, they can definitely find me on BiggerPockets, and I also have a website, fixfliprent.kc.com, that they can also connect there.
Awesome. Nathan, thank you so much for sharing your story. We really, really do appreciate it. I know we dug into some things that were difficult, and I know I certainly appreciate the willingness to be open about everything. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, guys.
All right, thank you.
All right, guys, that was Nathan Brooks from somewhere in the middle of America. I think the state is Kansas. I'm not sure that there's a lot of people living there, but if you're one of them, please don't send hate mail. No, seriously, Nathan was awesome. Really appreciate him being so open about his life and what he's been through. And we all go through tough times, and I think it's great for others to learn from it. So we always appreciate when somebody's willing to be open about these things.
That is true. That is true. I know back on our very first podcast we ever did, it was on how to lose $1 million with Marty Boardman. So yeah, people can definitely, if you've listened to that one, this one will be kind of familiar. So
yeah,
it's good to hear those stories. So with that, let's get out of here, Josh.
Yeah. Well, before we do, again, a quick thanks to our sponsor, Pensco, Pensco Trust, and you could learn more about them at learn.pensco.com. Definitely check them out. We'll have a link to that in our show notes as well. Otherwise, listen, if you haven't done it, you heard Nathan, he's on there, he's active, he's making partners and friends and doing business with people, because, BiggerPockets is the place to be. So if you're not on BiggerPockets yet, jump on, create an account today. It's free, www.biggerpockets.com, and start engaging, connecting. Otherwise, hang out with us on Facebook, on Twitter, on G+, on LinkedIn, on Pinterest. We're everywhere. And that's it. Get out there, make things happen, learn, be successful, be kind to others. And I don't know, go walk an old lady across the street, do something cool.
Good man.
Yeah, there you go. I'm Josh Dorkin, signing off.
You're listening to Bigger Pockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.